Hello and welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, Pat and James discuss juggling, what do self-employed creatives do to keep track of all the projects they're working on in a way that means nobody will miss a deadline and everybody will get the absolute best work possible. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pat.
Yes, James.
I've got bad news.
Uh-oh, what?
I broke all of the plates in the Gifted Underachievers Clubhouse kitchen.
What? How?
Yeah. Well, you remember those guys? They used to be on the Ed Sullivan Show, and they'd have a stick, and they'd spin the plate, and then they'd put another plate, and then they get all these plates spinning, and they'd have to go back to the first plate and get that spinning because it's starting to wobble, and then more plates start to wobble, but then they're trying to get more plates up because, the whole thing is the more plates
It's the spectacle. Yeah.
Or you get like this plate hunger where you want to have tons of plates spinning.
Yeah.
And well, I got all of our plates spinning and they all came crashing down.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, actually, I did not get all of our plates spinning. I couldn't get any plates spinning, and I used all the plates trying to get one plate spinning.
Jesus, make up your mind. What's the story?
I know. Well, the story is, it's feeling a little bit like life right now.
Yeah. Oh, I get you.
And I've got, I think about all these projects and clients and, and I want to do great work for everybody. And, but then there's outside life, want to be present for people and all that kind of stuff. So there's all these plates spinning and one starts to wobble. So I have to run over to that and get that going. And then the other starts to wobble and I have to run over to that and get it going.
Yeah.
And, and right now in the creative adjacent work world, it feels like I'm in the phase of when it rains, it pours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're in the feast part of the sometimes feast or famine cycle that freelancers can get into, although we've both been working at this long enough that we're not really in famine very often. I think 2024 for me was an exception, but other than that. So this is interesting to me. And are all the plates equally important?
Are all the plates equally important? In a way, yes, because you've said yes, right?
Yeah.
And the outside stuff, kids, wife, family, friends, those kinds of things. And they all have their level of importance. I mean, there's definitely some things you can slide to a little bit of a back burner. Sometimes a project will just naturally, due to its ebb and flow, allow you to, you don't have to focus on because maybe a client is revising something or, somebody's reviewing something or something like that.
Yeah.
But the other, piece of it is, taking on a rational amount of work. But then, I've got one book with an agent and they asked for some revisions. I got one book with a publisher. They've, and nothing terrible, but, it's just, it creates more plates.
Yeah. Yeah. Good one.
So you definitely get to this point where it can feel extremely stressful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm curious, I would ask you for how do you manage when you get here? Because I think you're, in the feast of the feast or famine of this as well.
Yeah, it's been a really good year in terms of interesting projects that I want to work on and that writers are willing to wait for me to be available, which I like because it means I can fill up my calendar to the middle of the year at least. From here, we're quite early in the year. So, and it also, it speaks to a certain amount of trust and connection and so on that I really like having good relationships with my clients. So I also have private projects like I have I call them pension projects. They are courses I've developed that I can run when I'm no longer, full-time working because I don't have a company pension because I work for myself basically. So so these are longer term projects that still have to be done. They're equally urgent. I can't get them all running up after I retire. I need to have them up and running so I can retire. So they're not optional. and that's a few years away, I'm not saying it's
Mhm.
now, but it's like anything. You want to get somewhere, you got to start heading
Yeah.
there before you want to be there. So I think my process is my system, I guess, is pretty much when I have multiple projects, I have three things. I have a whiteboard where I
Mhm.
track the projects under my care that are not mine. So client projects, I track them. I know when they begin, when they're due. I know what phase of the project I'm on because I do the same steps for the type of
Mhm.
work I do. And so I have it all laid out on a whiteboard. The steps are down one side, and then I move or write in each little space for each step. I write in the date that I either started or ended it, depending. And then I have the project description, 95,000 words, novel, whatever the project is, and the due date, and I just run through that. I look at it and go, okay, where am I on track with any of this stuff? And if I'm not, I focus on that all week basically to bring it back on track. That doesn't mean I'm not doing anything else all week. I'm also focusing on the other stuff, maintaining, but sometimes projects will shift in and out of my intense focus in order to keep timelines where I said they would be, because I work to deadline. So that's one thing is the whiteboard. One thing is that I do a review probably once a month.
Mhm.
I look at everything I've got going on and I have a like a paper agenda book and I populate my agenda book with basically the milestones that can't be dicks with, that can't be
Right. Right.
ignored. And so that keeps me oriented in the bigger picture. And that includes all the meetings I have, because some weeks I'll have 6 or 7 meetings,
Right.
and they're never less than an hour usually. And so that eats up a fair amount of time. That's almost an entire working day for many people
Yeah.
if you add them all up, right? So I kind of feel like the bird's eye view is very important. And then the third element is just do the fucking work. Like start
Right.
early.
Yeah.
Like I don't move shit around in my office just for the sake of moving it around. I get in and I put my start time down and I start in on a project. I usually
Yeah.
try and get a couple hours in on any project before I even check my
Uh-huh.
emails.
That's smart.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's all really smart. And it's close to what I do.
Yeah. What do you do?
Well, I think I think I always give you credit for being more organized because you are. Oh,
Yeah.
you're a very good organizer.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I've started doing, and I've mentioned this before, is I have this journal. It's called a self journal, and it's very good at planning in 13-week increments,
Oh,
right?
great.
And so I can set goals, and then I can set sort of iterative goals to reach them, and
Yeah.
then get down to the nitty gritty of planning each day, like what is tomorrow going to look like. So when I finish today, I'll go through and tomorrow being Saturday is not like a full work day, but I'm going to have to do some work. So I'm going to
Mm,
say, what do I need to do for that to, if I'm going to sacrifice free time, I want to
yeah.
make sure it can get used. So I do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then Sunday night, as I'm getting looking forward to the week, I'll use it to help organize what does the week look like?
Yeah.
What are the things, the immovable objects
Right.
that are going to take up time? And then thinking about, okay, so Monday I've got a meeting in the morning. In the afternoon, I've got another, appointment that's going to take some time. So how can I squeeze,
Yeah.
uh, you know, these other things that I need to do? And then Tuesday is a little bit more open, and I really try to keep the day as open as humanly possible,
Yeah.
so that I can do, say structure my work so I can go, okay, I'm gonna use the 4 hours of the morning to work on this one project, and I'm using the morning to do that because what I have to write is going to really require a fresh brain, right?
Yeah.
And then for the afternoon, I'm going to dedicate 3 hours, to this other project. It's a little bit less of a lift, and then an hour to three later, and so that beginning at like 3 4, I'll just kind of do some of the light stuff,
Hmm.
organizing and that kind of thing, and then after dinner I'll spend like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Reading, prepping, just figuring stuff out. The problem is when you get into this where you've got too many plates,
Yeah.
is that any little thing throws you off,
Yeah.
right? And so a phone call, and it's an important phone call, you've got to take it. I got one regarding the cover of a book,
Yeah.
and can't say no to that, but it throws off your stride.
Yeah.
So and so that I run into that challenge
Yeah.
is I can look at a week and say, here's my intention for it, but it's often hard to really hit that intention properly. And
Yeah.
so the answer that I've sort of come up with is making sure that I get each day sorted,
Yeah.
and that helps, because if I go, okay, I've got this going on, then I really need to put this time to its best use.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is and this I learned from cooking. If you want to learn how to prioritize, work in a busy restaurant as a
Yeah.
cook, or waitress too, probably. But my experience was cooking, and you get in the weeds and you got to figure your way out. There's
Yeah.
nobody that's going to come and save you. And so you've got to say, I can get this stuff out really quick. This stuff is going to take a little bit longer. It needs to go in the oven. And so basically that's what I do is
Hmm.
is kind of triage.
Yeah.
And there's certain projects that are going to take a little bit less time, like the revisions to the book proposal,
Yeah.
and I can just not fly through, but get those done and get that off, and it's off. It's one less plate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And same thing with these other revisions for this book is
Hmm.
once those are gone, that's a plate that's disappeared.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it's making sure that I'm continuing to churn out the work on the two books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and sometimes it works great, and I'll come to the end of the day and you have these little scores, 1 out of 10, for two different, did you get everything done that you wanted to get done, and how did you feel about the day?
Yeah.
One to, and sometimes I'll come and I'll be like, today was an 8. I
Yeah.
did. Some days it's like, today was a 2.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, but it's really trying to have a macro level view of things to understand them, and then a micro level view of measurement
Yeah.
and ability. So,
That's kind of, that sounds very logical. And I think the part, I guess, that can also throw things off, aside from, work related developments that you have to respond to, like needing to talk to somebody about a book cover when they need to talk about it, is you get chest pains. You spend the morning in emergency, or somebody you're close to, one of your family members or a very close friend, desperately needs you to do something for
mhm,
them during work hours. Or like yesterday, I spent probably an hour, half of which was me sitting waiting to talk to somebody about a government thing for my mom's estate. And
mhm,
I didn't really have a choice. It was I had filed the application, and so I had to be the one that went down there. And I was like, this is a colossal waste of time. And I'd already spent an hour on the phone with somebody, but it was the government, right? What are you going to do? You got to show
yeah,
up when they're working. So there's those things too that can, then you're working weekends and you're like, it's not because I was inefficient. It's because I had to
right.
do certain things that were unexpected, basically. And there's people who make all kinds of crazy suggestions, like, we'll book less work. But if you're self-employed, that's sometimes really you need to make a certain amount of money in order to float your household, and yeah, there's big ticket projects and there's lighter ticket projects, but it's not that none of them matter. They all matter to a
Yeah.
degree, So it's a juggling act, and I used to think of it as some plates are on the outside of the circle, because I've thought of this plate
Mhm.
thing before, especially when my kids were little. There's only so much you can
Yeah,
do,
yeah, yeah.
when you're a parent of young children, and you need to be there at bedtime. You need to be there at all these times of the day where they need a parent.
Mhm.
And so I was actually had to be pretty ruthless about saying this plate is gonna have to just sit there. It's gonna have to.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna deal with this plate for the next 6 months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's that, and also, having to be able to sort of go, okay, things didn't go to plan this week. I can't blame myself necessarily. I did everything that I should have been doing. Something, when you were talking about the friend needing you, if you want people to be there for you, you got to be there for them,
Yeah. Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so you also have to get good at one, just being really open
Yeah.
with clients and
Hmm.
say, look, I've had some things drop on my lap that from prior projects, and I have to be there for them in the same way that I will be there for you when
Hmm.
these things come up.
Yeah.
And then the other one is if somebody says, I wanted this in September, can you do it in May?
Yeah.
Then you've got to be like, we've got to that can't work, but let's talk about what
Yeah.
is going on here so that we can figure something out that so we're both happy. And
Yeah.
so it's about trying to be as open as possible and honest and communicating properly and that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
I think that, that you just nailed it. It's the communication part that I have never had somebody come back at me after if I communicated that something had gotten in the way of this project being completed to the deadline we had both agreed on. I mean, it's pretty rare with me because
Mhm.
I'm so tightly managing those client related projects, I think, and because my work is way less intense than you, I'm not writing books, However, I communication, even when I get an email from a potential client down the road and I know that I can't actually I can't deal with onboarding. I'm too busy to onboard. I communicate. I just send an email. I don't say I'm too busy to onboard. I just basically say, what's your schedule? Hi, I got your email. Here's, and just very quick. And I do it, like usually within 24 hours because then I'm still viable down the road as a potential
Right.
or as a potential service provider for this particular person. And then often it'll go away, because people never just email one of me at a time. There's other people who do the same work I do.
Mhm.
So it's pretty rare that they'll be like,
Yeah.
you're the only person
Yeah.
I'm contacting about this. So, yeah, I think it's all of those things. Communication probably being one of the best ways to manage juggling.
Mhm. Yeah, and the other is more of this triage, which is
Yeah.
sometimes you'll get that call and you just got to be like, I can't talk
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
and so there's definitely ignoring the phone, but sometimes it's a call from somebody you can't ignore,
No,
uh,
exactly.
brother or something like that, and it's like, hey, love you, but I'm in work mode. I got to focus on this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, you know, people are usually pretty good. So
Yeah. Nobody even calls me during the day.
no,
Nope. Ever.
yeah, no, I do. I get, I get the calls, but
Yeah.
but again, it's part of wanting to be there for them, so because they're there for me.
Yeah.
And but also kind of being able to sort of say, okay, this isn't the critical, I'm having a problem. This is, I need to connect. So maybe
Yeah.
we can talk later kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I shouldn't say nobody ever called. My mom called me during the day when she was around. And, yeah. Well, I think most people who know me, anyway, I, I wonder the juggling part, people don't know that it's like you're a duck, right? You're paddling
Mhm.
madly under the water, and all the people see is you swimming across a lake in serene
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the underwater paddling because even though we're both quite, I would say, pretty successful at what we do, there is a lot of figuring out how to deliver
Yeah.
in a reasonable time frame, and that just takes, like you said, scrutiny, the micro, the macro, and communication.
Yeah. And I would also say nobody is stress free and
No,
nobody is perfect in their execution or, anything.
you're right.
We all have issues.
Oh,
And
totally.
where I've seen other people who do what I do or similar to us get into trouble is when they feel like they can't be honest about their lives, right?
Yeah,
If they have a medical issue or a family or some really, it's an important and they need to put their attention on it. when they don't feel like they can communicate that
Yeah.
because they worry it signals weakness or irresponsibility or drama or something like that.
Yeah.
And the reality is, yes, there are certain things that you can do that signal those negative things, but for the most part, when it's real and it's authentic, people are going to understand.
Yeah.
But you also have no choice.
You have no choice. Yeah. And I think, the alternative is there's broken plates everywhere. Like, you don't have a choice.
Yeah. So, all right. Well,
okay.
We'll probably hit this one again at some point.
Yeah, we're curious about if anybody has techniques that they use for juggling. We'd love to hear them, because it's kind of it's a big part of any creative or creative adjacent person's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.